Hey gang, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Much appreciated you taking a few minutes out of your day to check the video out. And before we get started, I just really like to ask everybody, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you like the videos, hit that like button. It really helps out the little algorithm on the channel, and helps just a great way to support the channel if you like what I'm doing here. And also, we're coming up on 40,000 subscribers. Looks like we'll probably hit that, I'm guessing, sometime in a week and a half, something like that. And when we hit 40,000, we're going to have a big product giveaway. You know, cases of Bridgeford beef jerky, Seaguar fishing line, the Solar Bat sunglasses, and all you have to do is subscribe to have a chance to win that, and would be much appreciated by me and my family if you could do that. Because right now, like, over 50% of you dudes out there are not subscribed, just watching these videos without subscribing. So that's all we ask, is hit that subscribe button, man. Appreciate it. So, hey, what we're going to talk about today is actually, I've gotten 3 or 4 requests on this over the past couple weeks to have a little bit of information on, and that's ambush points. What are ambush points? You know, how do they apply to fishing? You know, basically getting an understanding of what ambush points are. And this particular video, obviously it would make for a lot better video if I had some on the water video, and I had some graphics, and I had some data and that type of stuff. But guys, I don't have this is a low-tech channel. This is not one of those high-dollar YouTube channels where a lot of those bass fishing pros that have YouTube channels, guys, they hire people to edit the videos, they hire photographers to travel around the country with them. And I'm just not at that level yet to do that. So you guys are going to have to get the information packed version, yet the low tech version of Here in the Backyard, which I can promise you, you know, you're going to get probably more information out of this than you would on one of those high tech on the waters. At some point, you know, maybe I'll get where I can do some videos on the water for some of this stuff. Yeah, that's probably down the road a little bit, but man, you guys are going to have to help me get a lot more subscribers before I can do that a lot more. Okay, let's talk a little bit about these ambush points. To start out with, let's just build a foundation with it, what an ambush point is. Basically, an ambush point is just what it says. It's a place that the bass will position at to basically ambush prey, you know, to give themselves an advantage to strike prey. And in other words, the bass are hunting. I mean, it's just like when people go hunting, you know, they try to, you know, camouflage themselves and get into a good ambush point. It's the same with bass, what they do with their prey. But it goes beyond that a little bit more, because when we're talking about ambush points for bass specifically, you're talking about a lot of different things that can be ambush points. And you're talking about also how to capitalize on catching the bass that are also preying on other fish. So we're actually predators preying on predators that may be preying on some lower predator. And there's a little bit of variables that go to that. Talk a little bit about the types of ambush points. A lot of times it goes anywhere from the obvious to the subtle. Some of the most obvious, you know, ambush points you have are going to be like, you know, dock piling, stumps, laydowns, grass edges, anything that offers some place where the bass can get in, tuck in behind to wait for food to come by. Current eddies, anything like that. Those are the obvious ambush points, which are also good. Some of the less obvious ambush points, which they change more than the obvious ambush points, are things like shade lines, mud lines, you know, wind, that type of stuff. Things that create an ambush point in a temporary situation or something that changes specifically. So that's one of the things you sort of have to think about a lot of times in both shallow water and deep water fishing at times, because you're going to have 2 different types of bass in a lake for the most part. You're going to have those bass that prefer to set up on ambush points, and then you're going to have a percentage of those bass that are roamers that don't really set up on any type of ambush points, and they basically are active hunters. They're cruising looking for bass under a wide range of situations. And so let's talk a little bit about the roamers a little bit. The roamers can be basically bass in a lot of different type of situations. You can get roamers in clear water, you can get roamers in, you know, stained water, and you can get roamers in muddy water. An example of a good roamer type bass, what it would be, say for example, if you're fishing some fairly clear water, lower end of the lake, water visibility in that, say that 3 foot or greater range, and you're fishing some pea gravel points. Now, a lot of times these bass, they will get, in a lot of different times of year, not just right now, I mean, you can apply this to now, but a lot of times, if you're after bass that are roamers that are not related to ambush points, these bass, like I said, they can be cruising pea gravel points, they can be, looking for a crawdad along the bottom, they can be looking for, a little school of minnows up shallow, maybe a school of shad comes across there, maybe a bluegill swimming across there, and they're constantly moving, constantly roaming, constantly looking for food. They're not positioned to be set up on an ambush point. That's the clearwater environment, and it's the same if you go the opposite end of the spectrum into muddy water. Say for example, you're in the back of a flat cove that's got 12 inches of visibility, and it's sort of maybe a sandy, muddy type bottom. A lot of times it's the same deal. Those bass can get out there on those shallow flats without any cover on it, and they're just cruising out there again, looking for shad, looking for crawfish, whatever, active hunters. That's one population of bass. The second population of bass are the ones that specifically set up on some type of ambush point. If you're fishing shallow water, it could be whatever cover is available. It could be grass, it could be docks, it could be wood, it could be isolated rocks, that type of stuff. If you're fishing offshore structures, it could be man-made brush piles, it could be drop-offs, it could be some type of a deep timber or stump, it could be some type of cover in deeper water that those bass are setting up on. Okay, so so that's the foundation of the two different types. Now, as far as your approach to them, if you're fishing, for those roamers like that, there's a lot of different ways you can catch them. I mean, you can catch them just fan casting, a combination of slow or fast moving baits, depending upon the type of condition you're fishing. But specifically, if you're fishing hard ambush points, like we're talking about, where you have a real definitive edge, just like a stump, you got this bass sitting on the shady side of the stump waiting for something to swim by. The key on catching these bass and taking advantage of these ambush points is understanding how the bass are positioned on this cover. And the way that they're positioned, a lot of time, it can be a combination of how the cover's laying in the water. It can be how the shade's coming off of that particular piece of cover. It can be how the current's coming on that, how the current's hitting that particular piece of cover. A lot of different factors. And sometimes you can't really predict how those bass are going to be positioned. So the big key, guys, if you're fishing visible ambush points or ambush points that are down there, you have got to saturate the area with a multitude of different casting angles. Because I've seen the times, say if I'm fishing a lay down log that's in 3 foot of water, and maybe I can just see a dark spot in the water that I know the log's there, and there may be even be a, like a thick root wad section that's got some shade on it. While that may be a high percentage spot, a lot of times you don't know how those bass are setting up on there. If they're on a piece of shallow water cover, it's not like they're just stationary and not moving. These bass a lot of times are finning, they're swimming around, they're moving, they'll move around the cover and set up in a certain position. You don't really know how that bass is positioned. So the first thing that I like to do is I go for the high percentage ambush spot, which is normally the obvious shade lines, current breaks, hard edges, that type of stuff. If that doesn't get me a bite, I'm going to go into some type of a multiple casting angle presentation where I hit those areas that aren't quite as obvious on there. And that just, again, that depends on the type of cover that you're fishing. What's the matter? Huh? What's the matter back there? Huh? Lodge looks a little upset about something. So what's the matter? You want to tell everybody what the matter is? Okay. Hold on, guys. I'm going to see what's going on. Okay, guys. Just had to put out a little fire there. So, back to the ambush point on the obvious structures. Always go for that obvious spot. And if you can't, break down those particular pieces of cover from different angles. Because, like I said, even though they may be set up on a specific ambush point, you don't really know how they're positioned down there. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the inobvious ambush points. The places like, shade lines on bare areas, mud lines, that type of stuff, maybe wind generated ambush points. Those things are constantly changing, and you have to take advantage of those situations on a situational level. If you're fishing shade, that type of stuff, you always want to key in on any type of a shade line. I mean, shade is a key ambush point in whether it be dirty water or clear water, either or. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to rate shade as some of the top cover that I like to fish. I mean, particularly as the water temperature gets a little bit warmer, I mean, that's going to be a big key on that. So, sorry, I've got to get away from the kids crying and the dogs barking here. So, take advantage of the shade situation. You know, if you're on a mudline situation, mudlines can offer a really good ambush point on there. Most of the time on the mudlines, they may not necessarily be on the exact break where the mud and the cleaner water takes place. They could be up in the mud just a little bit, but they offer a prime area too, and the same with wind. Anytime, for the most part, I found out where you have some type of a temporary ambush point, you're going to do a lot better by making casts with moving type lures, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, lipless crankbaits. That type of stuff is going to be a big deal there. So anyway, like I said, you know, as a foundational, just to go back on this ambush points, I just want to hit that there's two main highlight points. Is when you go to the lake, just realize that you have two different populations of fish. You have the fish that relate to and set up on ambush points, and then you have a percentage of those bass that don't care anything about ambush points, and they're cruisers and roamers. They're two different personalities of fish, and you have to approach them differently. But for the most part, you're going to find that you will catch your bigger fish on some type of hard ambush point. Normally those big fish are territorial, they're loners, they like to set up on the prime piece of cover. The prime piece of hard cover that offers the best ambush for them is where those big fish are going to set up on. And that's why your wood structures like stumps and laydowns and docks and drop-offs and man-made brush piles deep, that's why those areas produce a lot of bigger fish there too. Same with grass. You can use grass the same way you use any type of cover. Depending upon the how defined of a hard edge the grass is, they can relate differently on that. You can have scattered grass be an ambush point, and you can have a hard wall of grass be an ambush point too. But just be aware of it. Just be aware when you see an ambush point, try to put yourself in the position if you were a bass. If you were trying to hide in a dark area to be able to go out and just nail something like that, where would you hide at? And if you can sort of get into the bass's brain a little bit, it'll really go a long way to getting a few more bites for you. Because guys, bass fishing is all about awareness. I mean, that's one of the things too. It's all about increasing your awareness, becoming aware of every aspect in your environment, in the bass's environment. And the more aware that you are, and the more information that you can assimilate like that, the better success you're going to have, and the more the more short and long-term success you're going to have as an angler. So anyway, just a few tips there. Shoot me some comments, guys. If I can help you guys with any questions, shoot them on there, and we'll go over that a little bit more. And thanks again for tuning in. Much appreciated.